Linda Ronstadt is one of the really great talents in country music.
Would you welcome, please, Linda Ronstadt.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Linda Ronstadt.
That's what someone told me, but I don't know.
What did Linda Ronstadt hide from the world for decades while standing under the brightest spotlight in music? Why did the woman who conquered rock, pop, and country, selling millions of albums and filling arenas, never marry despite numerous high-profile romances? And what devastating diagnosis would eventually silence the voice that defined a generation? The answers reveal a story far more complex than the polished legend the world thought it knew. For years, the world believed it understood Linda Ronstadt, the fearless voice, the confident star, the woman who seemed to have everything under control. But fame has a way of hiding truths in plain sight. Behind the dazzling performances and iconic songs was something she never intended to reveal. Now at 79, she is finally lifting the curtain on what she kept hidden for decades. This isn't the polished story of a music legend. It's the raw, emotional truth of a woman who gave the world her voice while keeping her deepest struggles completely out of view. Born in 1946, Linda Ronstadt's early life was shaped by a rich blend of cultures and sounds. Raised in Tucson, Arizona, she grew up at the crossroads of her Mexican father's heritage and her white mother's love of European traditions. Music was never distant in the Ronstadt home. Her father, Gilbert, a machinery merchant by trade, filled the house with traditional Mexican songs, while her mother, Ruth, introduced Linda to grand operas and classical melodies. Between these worlds, Linda found her voice, absorbing the desert's quiet beauty, a landscape that seemed to deepen the emotional ache and warmth that would later define her singing. Her journey truly began in the mid-1960s with her band, the Stone Ponies. When Different Drum became a hit in 1967, it was clear her voice carried something rare. Fame followed quickly, but Linda refused to stand still. She moved fearlessly between country, pop, and rock, carving out a path few women had dared to take. Throughout the 1970s, she dominated the charts with albums like Heart Like a Wheel, Simple Dreams, and Living in the USA, filling massive arenas once reserved almost entirely for men. She became a symbol of artistic independence, gracing the covers of major magazines and earning titles that reflected her unprecedented reach. Yet behind the success was loneliness, relentless touring, and constant battles with industry sexism. But here's what most people never knew. Linda Ronstadt faced a challenge that threatened to end her career before it truly began. In a 1969 interview, she spoke candidly about how isolating her position felt. Leading an all-male backing band as a young solo artist came with constant resistance. Many male musicians struggled with their pride, uneasy about being seen as support players for a female singer. Finding collaborators who truly respected her vision was a challenge she faced from the very beginning. By 1969, Linda Ronstadt stepped fully into her own, releasing her first solo album, Hand-Sewn, Homegrown, while also lending her voice to various projects. She even sang on commercials during this period, including a quirky spot for Remington electric razors alongside Frank Zappa, an early sign of how fluidly she moved between the serious and the unexpected. Her second solo album, Silk Purse, followed in March 1970. Recorded in Nashville and produced by Elliot Mazer on Janis Joplin's recommendation, the album visually captured Linda's contradictions. The front cover placed her in a muddy pig pen, while the inside revealed her glowing on stage in bright red. As she built her solo career, Linda toured relentlessly with backing bands that shaped the emerging country rock sound. Her earliest group, Swamp Water, blended country, folk, and swamp rock. Soon after, another backing band included Don Henley, Glenn Frey, Bernie Leadon, and Randy Meisner, musicians who would soon become the Eagles. They toured briefly with Linda in 1971 and played on her third album, which featured Rock Me on the Water. By 1973, as she began work on her fourth solo album, Don't Cry Now, Linda was determined to change that dynamic. Having moved to Asylum Records, she partnered with John Boylan and songwriter J.D. Souther. On a recommendation passed through James Taylor's circle, she brought in Peter Asher to co-produce select tracks. That decision quietly reshaped her career. The album delivered her first major country success with Silver Threads and Golden Needles. Backstage at a Texas show, a chance introduction to Emmylou Harris sparked a friendship and creative bond that would last for decades. Don't Cry Now became her most successful record to date, selling hundreds of thousands of copies. More importantly, her partnership with Asher proved transformative, allowing Linda to finally take control in the studio. Despite the exhausting rhythm of life on Road, Linda Ronstadt's life was never devoid of love, even if many assumed otherwise. As her fame grew, she found herself linked to influential figures from music, film, and even politics. Yet she remained unmarried, a choice that fueled endless speculation. Rumors circulated that her single status reflected fear, rejection, or assumptions about her personal identity. Linda quietly rejected those narratives. She made it clear that she believed in love and even marriage, but only if it felt true. She wanted a partner who stirred her spirit, someone loyal, kind, able to laugh easily, and who understood her deep bond with music. With a self-aware smile, she once described herself as a serial monogamist, suggesting marriage simply never outranked her calling. In the early 1970s, she shared a serious relationship with producer John Boylan. When it ended, she found love again with songwriter J.D. Souther. For 2 years, their romance and creativity intertwined, producing some of her most emotionally resonant songs. There were other chapters too. She was linked to Bill Murray and Jim Carrey in the 1980s, and was even engaged for a time to filmmaker George Lucas, after meeting him backstage at one of her concerts. One of her most public relationships unfolded in the 1970s with California Governor Jerry Brown. Intense yet private, they split their time between Los Angeles and Malibu. Linda later remembered him fondly. Intelligent, disciplined, and refreshingly different from the chaos of rock culture. She even organized concerts to support Brown's presidential run in 1980. In the end, love passed through Linda Ronstadt's life in many forms, but music remained her constant companion, demanding, consuming, and ultimately irreplaceable. Linda Ronstadt's legacy stands as one of the most extraordinary and hard-earned in modern music history. Critics and historians have repeatedly described her as the defining female rock artist of her generation. She emerged at a time when rock was an unforgiving male-dominated world, yet she didn't just survive it, she ruled it. By the mid-1970s, she had become a cultural force whose album covers, posters, and public image were as recognizable as her voice. Her commercial achievements reflected her boldness. Albums like Heart Like a Wheel, Simple Dreams, What's New, and Cry Like a Rainstorm, Howl Like the Wind sold in the millions. At her peak, she was the highest-grossing solo female concert artist of the 1970s, a feat once thought impossible. She later released an all-Spanish album that became the best-selling non-English record in U.S. history, an act of cultural pride rather than commercial calculation. But then came the revelation that would change everything. In August 2001, Linda Ronstadt shared the most painful truth of her life. She could no longer sing. What she believed at first to be lingering effects from shoulder surgery was diagnosed as Parkinson's disease, a condition that slowly robbed her of muscle control and silenced the voice that had defined her existence. Years later, doctors revised the diagnosis to progressive supranuclear palsy, a rarer neurological disorder. The correction did little to soften the loss. For an artist who lived inside music, the absence of singing was not just physical, it was deeply spiritual. Linda Ronstadt never believed in silence when conscience was involved. She spoke out against war, political deception, and injustice throughout her career, even when it cost her professionally. She supported equal rights, stood alongside protesters during immigration debates in Arizona, and championed environmental and cultural preservation. Her activism extended to celebrating Mexican heritage and protecting artistic traditions. In the end, Linda Ronstadt's story is not only one of triumph, but of endurance. a reminder that breaking barriers often comes with isolation, and that lasting greatness is built through courage, conviction, and an unwavering commitment to one's art. She gave the world her voice, her passion, and her truth, asking nothing in return but the freedom to sing.